After watching this, you'll immediately understand the meaning of one brutal truth. Sometimes the people who say they love you the most are the very ones who erase the parts of you that hurt them. Lina Morgan had never been the clingy type. Not with people anyway. But there was one exception. Plush toy. Simba. Not just any Simba. Not a random store-bought trinket. This one was different. This one had history. Lina's dad had bought it for her before she was even born. He was a Lion King fan through and through. You know the type. Could quote every line, hum every tune, and would proudly call himself Mufasa when tucking Lina in at night. Simba was her constant. Through scraped knees, bad dreams, birthdays, and even funerals. Because when her dad passed away, Simba became more than a toy. He became her anchor. At night, Lina would wrap her dad's old t-shirt around Simba. The faded scent of him, that subtle mix of aftershave and coffee, was the only thing that made sleep possible. He wasn't there, but Simba was. And for Lina that was enough. For a while. But then, as life loves to do, things changed. Her mom, Amelia, started dating again. A few casual dinners turned into serious relationships. Out of the rotation of candidates, one man stuck around. Mark. Lina never liked Mark. Not because he was cruel. Not because he shouted or slammed doors. No, it was worse than that. He was dismissive. Of her grief. Of her boundaries. Of her dad's memory. Where other people would tiptoe gently around the subject of her late father, Mark would barge in with comments like, "You need to move on, Lina. Life doesn't wait for you." Imagine hearing that from a man who wasn't even family yet. Still, her mom liked him. Loved him even. She made it clear. "Lina, I know you like James, but Mark is the one for me. I need you to give him a chance. Once we're married, he'll be a full part of this family. Including when it comes to your father's things." Lina's heart sank. It wasn't about hating her mom's happiness. She just wanted space. But space wasn't something Mark understood. The cracks deepened. And then came the day Amelia announced she was pregnant again. For Lina, it wasn't joy. It wasn't even anger. It was indifference. She wasn't cruel. She didn't wish ill on her half-sister to be. But she also didn't pretend this was some beautiful, blended family moment. And that was the beginning of the quiet war in their home. 3 years passed. Tension simmered. Then, 2 months ago, Amelia miscarried at 17 weeks. Grief settled over the house like a heavy blanket. But not the same grief Lina knew. This was different. It was sharp. And Amelia was drowning in it. Lina, still carrying the weight of her own father's loss, found herself isolated again. Her pain had always been too much for others. And now, her mother's pain was supposed to eclipse hers. And then came the moment that would shatter what little bond they had left. It was a quiet afternoon. Lina came home from school, dumped her bag on the floor, and headed to her room. That's when she saw it. Her half-sister, Ella, sitting on Lina's bed. Holding Simba. No, clutching him. His once bright fur dulled with drool. His stitched smile stretched as tiny fingers tugged and twisted. For a second, Lina couldn't move. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. Amelia appeared in the doorway, casual, like this was nothing. "She wanted him," Amelia said, almost cheerful. "I left your door open and she saw him on your bed. Thought it wouldn't hurt. A child gets more joy out of a toy, right?" That was the moment Lina felt something inside her snap. Not rage. Not sadness. Betrayal. Low. Cold. Dark. She looked at her mother, her voice dangerously calm. "Do you remember what Mark said in therapy? About how Simba was the only thing I was allowed to keep from Dad? Do you remember how you agreed to leave it be?" Amelia's face paled. Like she'd only just realized what she'd done. I didn't think." "No," Lina interrupted. "You didn't." She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just walked past her mother, sat at her desk, and ignored every word that followed. Over the next few days, Amelia tried to mend what was broken. She offered Simba back. But he was different now. His fur, once soft from years of careful hands, was matted with toddler drool. A tear near his paw, where stuffing peeked through like a wound. Lina didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Every time her mother tried to speak, Lina's silence said it louder. The weight of what Amelia had done hung in the air. It wasn't about a toy. It was about trust. And that trust had been ripped apart, stitch by stitch. Amelia's desperation grew. She had Simba cleaned, repaired. But you can't fix something once it's been violated. Lina didn't budge. And that's when Amelia did the unthinkable. She sent Grandma Ruth. If there was one person Lina couldn't shut out completely, it was Ruth. They sat in the kitchen, the late afternoon light casting long shadows across the table. "Sweetheart," Ruth began, "your mom is not a perfect woman. God knows that. But she's grieving too. Maybe it's time to talk." Lina looked at her, eyes cold but calm. She didn't ask because she knew the answer. She knew Simba was off limits. She knew what that toy meant to me. But she did it anyway. Ruth sighed, wringing her hands. She thought Ella would get more use out of it. "That's the problem," Lina replied. "To her, Simba is a toy. To me, he's Dad." Ruth didn't argue, 'cause she understood. But what she asked next struck deeper than Lina expected. "If your dad was here, what would he want for you now?" Lina didn't answer. Because she didn't know. What she did know was that her mom had made a choice. And Lina was making hers. For now that choice was silence. But silence doesn't last forever. Especially in a house where unresolved things fester. And the explosion was coming. They just didn't know when. Or how loud it would be. The house had been too quiet for too long. That suffocating, fake kind of quiet. The one where everyone's tiptoeing, pretending things are fine, but you can feel the storm humming beneath the walls. And Lina was done pretending. The truth was, she wasn't even angry anymore. She was tired. Tired of being the one expected to understand. To compromise. To be mature. Funny how everyone loves your maturity when it keeps them comfortable. But all it really does is teach you how to swallow your hurt in silence. Until you can't. It was a Sunday afternoon when Mark stormed into her room. No knocking. No warning. Just barging in like he owned the place. "Enough of this childish behavior, Lina," he snapped. She didn't look up from her book. That made him angrier. "Your mother is in pieces because of you. She's grieving. She's lost a child. And here you are, sulking over a stupid toy." Stupid toy. That was the trigger. Lina closed her book slowly, stood up, and faced him. "Get out." Mark's face turned red. "Excuse me. You heard me. Get out of my room." His voice rose. "This is my house. You don't get to give orders here." And that's when Amelia appeared. "Mark," she said sharply, stepping between them. "Not like this." But Mark wasn't done. "She treats Ella like she's a disease. She acts like your family doesn't exist because her precious memories are more important than reality." Lina's hands curled into fists. "This isn't about Ella," she said, voice steady. "It's about you. About Mom. About never once asking what I needed. About taking the only thing I had left of my dad and handing it over like it was nothing." Amelia flinched. Mark sneered. "Your mother has bent over backward for you. She's done with your emotional blackmail." And that word blackmail hit like a slap. Lina could feel the burn behind her eyes, the lump in her throat. But she refused to cry. "Get room." Mark stepped forward, but Amelia grabbed his arm. "She's not going anywhere," Amelia said firmly. "And neither are you." The tension crackled. For a moment no one moved. Then Mark shook off her hand and left, muttering curses under his breath. The house felt like it had exhaled after holding its breath too long. Amelia stood there, eyes glistening. "I never wanted this, Lina. I never wanted us to be like this." Lina sat back down. "I didn't either." There was a long pause. "I know I hurt you," Amelia said softly. "With Simba. With Mark. With everything. Lina stayed silent. I thought if I made room for new memories, it would make the old ones hurt less. I was wrong. And I see that now. The walls Lina had built didn't crumble. But maybe, just maybe, a crack appeared. Simba was never about the toy, Mom. He was Dad. He was safe. And you gave that away. Amelia's voice broke. I'm so sorry. And for the first time it sounded real. Not an apology to end the fight, but an apology to start healing. But forgiveness isn't a switch. It's not instant. Lina knew that. She also knew her silence had spoken for her long enough. I need space, Mom. Space where Dad still exists. Where he's not competing with Mark's version of moving on. Amelia nodded slowly. I can give you that. And that was more than Lina expected. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the betrayal. But it was a start. The next day, Simba was back on Lina's bed. Not dropped off casually, but placed there with care. Freshly cleaned. The tear repaired. A small note tucked in his tiny paw. He's yours. Always was. Always will be. Lina didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. But because healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet moment with a stuffed lion and a lifetime of memories. Mark kept his distance after that. Maybe Amelia had words with him. Maybe he realized he'd crossed a line. Either way, Lina didn't care. She wasn't here to fix him. She was here to protect what mattered. And in doing so, she had found a new kind of strength. Not the loud, confrontational kind. But the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind her father would have been proud of. In the weeks after that explosive confrontation, the house found a new rhythm. Not peaceful. Not yet. But different. Mark kept his distance. His voice no longer booming through the walls. Whether it was shame, guilt, or a warning from Amelia, Lina didn't know. Or care. He stayed out of her space. And that was enough. Amelia, though, she was trying. Not in the performative way she used to. No forced family dinners. No awkward let's all sit and talk sessions. Instead it was quiet efforts. She started knocking before entering Lina's room. Small change. But massive. She asked gently before moving things around the house, especially anything that belonged to Lina's dad. Even little things like dusting off his old photo frames were now treated with care, with respect. It wasn't about permission. It was about finally seeing Lina as more than a problem to be managed. And slowly, painfully, that chipped away at the wall between them. One evening, Lina found herself sitting in the living room, Simba curled against her side, while Amelia folded laundry in silence. No tension. No forced small talk. Just coexistence. Funny how powerful that can be. You know, Amelia said after a while, not looking up, I was scared you'd always see me as the enemy. Lina didn't respond immediately. 'Cause honestly, she had. But something her grandma said kept echoing in her mind. People try to erase what hurts them. Not because they don't care, but because they're scared to look back. That was Amelia. She wasn't evil. She was terrified. Terrified that holding on to Lina's father meant she'd never fully move on. Terrified that acknowledging Lina's grief would somehow keep her trapped in her own. But fear is no excuse for betrayal. And Lina wasn't about to let her mother off the hook that easily. I still don't agree with how you handled things, Lina said, voice calm. But I see you're trying now. That matters. Amelia smiled. Tired. But genuine. I wish I had listened sooner. Lina nodded. Me too. For the first time, that conversation didn't feel like a battle. Felt like an understanding. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a truce built on new rules. Respect. Boundaries. Honesty. Later that week, something unexpected happened. Amelia invited Lina to visit her grandmother's house. Just the two of them. No Mark. No Ella. Just mother and daughter. Lina hesitated. But she agreed. Because rebuilding bridges isn't about grand gestures. It's about choosing to show up. They spent the afternoon flipping through old photo albums. Stories were shared. Some were painful. Some made them laugh. And for a fleeting moment it felt like before. Not the same. Never the same. But a version of connection that wasn't forced. When they returned home, Lina noticed something on her bed. New shelf. Simple. But on it, carefully placed, were Lina's cherished items of her dad. A framed photo of him holding newborn Lina. Baseball cap he always wore. And Simba, sitting proudly in the center. It wasn't the shelf that mattered. It was the fact that Amelia had given Lina's memories a place of honor. Not hidden away. Not threatened. But respected. That gesture spoke louder than any apology. It was the moment Lina realized she could carry both loves in her heart. Her father's memory. And her complicated, flawed, human mother. No one was asking her to let go. They were simply learning to let each other in carefully this time. It wasn't perfect. Some days were tense. But perfection had never been the goal. Respect was. And with that, a new chapter began. Lina would always mourn her father. She would always protect Simba. But she didn't have to live with anger as her armor. Because now, finally, her grief was being held, not pushed away. And that was worth more than forced forgiveness ever could be. Final moral message. Healing begins when we stop trying to erase each other's pain. Respecting someone's grief doesn't mean carrying it for them. It means not trampling over what they hold sacred. True connection grows